All right, class. Welcome. For the past few weeks, we've been comfortable. We've been in the world of simple product markets, selling things, rooms, tours, coconuts on the beach, nice, clean supply and demand curves. Well, today, we're leaving that behind. We are diving headfirst into something way more complex, way more human, the factor market. Specifically, we're running a masterclass on the labor market in tourism, and we're going to find out why managing people is, without a doubt, its single greatest challenge.
Just let that sink in for a second. This quote, this is pretty much the fundamental economic principle for our entire conversation today. Look, in a car factory, you want to boost productivity, you buy a robot. In a tech world, you want to scale, you write better code. But in hospitality, you just can't automate a genuine welcome. The human interaction isn't just a part of the service, it literally is the product. So what does that actually mean for a business? Let's unpack it.
So here's our game plan. First, we're going to really nail down this idea of the human element as the product itself. Then we're going to dissect the four massive economic forces that just wreak havoc on this industry. You've got the wild swings of seasonality, this weird polarized skill divide, the hidden cost of what we call emotional labor, and this constant nagging turnover tax. And then at the end, we'll pull it all together and figure out what the real job of a hospitality manager looks like in the 21st century.
Okay, section 1. This is the big pivot. I want you to mentally leave behind those neat graphs of tangible goods. We are now entering the messy, unpredictable, but honestly fascinating world of the market for people. This right here gets to the absolute core of it. Think about it. When you check into a beautiful resort, say in Tanjung Lesung, you're not really just buying 4 walls and a bed, are you? No, you are buying a feeling. You're buying the warmth from the person at the front desk, the attentiveness of the waiter, the care the housekeeper took, the smile you get. That's the transaction. It's a real economic exchange of emotion and attention, not just you handing over cash for a room key. All right, let's get into our first major challenge. And trust me, this one's a monster. The demand for labor in the tourism sector isn't a nice, steady line, not even close. It's a dramatic, pulsing wave. And if you don't understand this rhythm, you can't possibly understand the market. Now, seasonality isn't random. It's a predictable and frankly brutal cycle. During a peak holiday like Eid, a big resort might need, say, 200 staff members running around. But just a few weeks later, when the rainy season hits, that number could crash to maybe 70. Now put on your economist hat. How do you justify paying 130 people when their marginal productivity of labor is effectively 0? You can't. This isn't just a small hiccup, it's a fundamental instability that's baked right into the DNA of the business model.
And that leads to this classic, impossible choice for any manager. Imagine you're the GM. What do? If you keep too many staff during the low season, your wage bill will bleed you dry. You are literally paying people to be idle. But get caught with too few staff on New Year's Eve, your service completely collapses, your online reviews get torched, and all that future revenue just goes up in smoke. See the problem? There's no easy answer. It's just a constant, high-stakes tightrope walk between financial ruin and operational disaster.
And this is where the abstract theory crashes into reality. If you're the CFO, how on earth do you forecast revenue that swings this wildly from month to month? If you're the HR manager, how do you build any kind of team culture when you can't even promise your best people a job year-round? This instability forces the business to rely on temporary, flexible contracts. And guess what? That creates a whole new cascade of problems with training, loyalty, and service consistency. It's a vicious cycle.
So that instability then leads us right into our second major challenge. The tourism workforce, it doesn't look like a nice, smooth pyramid of skills. It looks more like a barbell, with all the weight loaded at the two absolute extremes.
Think about how a resort is structured. You need 1, maybe 2 superstar executive chefs. You need 1 visionary general manager to set the strategy. These are your highly skilled experts. But you also need 100 people to handle cleaning, gardening, laundry, and basic maintenance. There is almost nothing in the middle. And this isn't a management choice. It is a structural reality of how the business operates.
And here is the direct, visual consequence of that structure. Just look at this. All under the same roof, you have this enormous wage gap. The general manager might be earning 50, maybe 60 times what the gardener makes. Now, from a cold microeconomic perspective, this is perfectly rational, right? The market values their skills differently. But switch to your human resources hat. How do you possibly build a cohesive, motivated team when you have that kind of disparity staring everyone in the face every single day?
This, of course, creates another brutal trade-off. Where do you allocate your limited resources?
Do you spend a massive premium to recruit and retain that one-star GM whose strategic decisions can literally make or break the entire business? Or do you invest that same money in a small but meaningful wage increase for the 150 frontline staff whose collective performance is the actual guest experience? Both are critical, but the budget is finite. What do you do? So you see how this economic structure creates these really deep human challenges? I mean, how do you motivate a gardener when the very next step up the ladder requires a completely different skill set, like becoming fluent in English to work the front desk? The career ladder is missing rungs, and that means your training programs have to be incredibly diverse. You're teaching advanced finance to your executives in one room, while you're teaching basic safety for boat operators in another. It's really like running two totally different companies that just happen to share the same logo. And now we come to what might be the most subtle yet most powerful economic force in this entire market. If the product you're selling is an experience, then the factory floor is human emotion. Emotional labor is so much more than just service with a smile. It's the conscious, draining, and frankly exhausting effort to manage your own internal feelings in order to manufacture a positive feeling in the customer. And here is the key economic insight. A waiter who's having a bad day isn't just a personal problem. It is a product defect. Their mood can instantly contaminate and ruin the guest experience, which means their emotional state is actually part of the product being sold. This slide really highlights the critical difference with manufacturing. You know, a car factory has a quality control line at the end. They could find a defect and fix it before it ever reaches the customer. But in the service industry, production and consumption happen at the exact same time. The product is made, consumed, and judged in a single instant. There are no recalls for a bad mood. There are no do-overs. The transaction is final, in real time.
So what on earth does this mean for management? Well, for starters, it means you have to start hiring for personality, not just for technical skill. It also means you have to treat employee burnout not as some fluffy wellness issue, but as a critical threat to your product quality. And it creates this nearly impossible question. How do you measure emotional output on a performance review? How do you quantify a good attitude? It's a massive, massive challenge.
So our final challenge is really the inevitable result of the first three. I mean, what happens when you combine seasonal work, broken career ladders, and high emotional burnout? You get a revolving door. You get notoriously, incredibly high employee turnover. In this industry, staff churn isn't a crisis that you solve, it's a constant state of being. People leave when the season ends. They'll move to the resort down the road for a tiny pay bump. Or they'll just decide to go back to their home village for a while. Now, this isn't always a sign of bad management. It's a structural feature of the labor market itself. It's just the way it is.
And this constant churn has a huge, often hidden economic cost. I like to call it the training tax. And it's a tax because it's not a one-time expense. It is a persistent, recurring drain on your budget and, just as importantly, on your manager's time and attention. You are in a constant state of spending money just to get back to a baseline level of competence because all of your institutional knowledge keeps walking out the door month after month.
This presents us with one last critical strategic choice, the retention dilemma. Do you invest more money up front in higher wages and better benefits, which raises your fixed costs but hopefully lowers turnover? Or do you accept the churn, keep wages low, and just build an incredibly efficient machine for constantly recruiting, hiring, and training new people? There are very successful businesses that have chosen both paths. There's no single right answer.
Okay, let's pull all these threads together now. The real job of a leader in hospitality isn't about solving any one of these problems in isolation. It's about managing the complex, messy, interconnected ecosystem that they all create together.
And this, right here, is the ultimate point. The general manager's real job is to be an orchestrator of chaos. Think about it. They have to take a workforce that is, by its very nature, unstable, divided, emotionally drained, and constantly changing. And from that incredibly difficult raw material, they have to somehow produce a perfectly consistent, high-quality guest experience every single day. I'd argue it's one of the toughest management jobs in any industry on the planet.
So, I'll leave you all with this final question to think about. In an industry where your people are the product, does that mean that your company's greatest asset is also, at the exact same time, its greatest liability? That paradox, that tension is the central, defining challenge of the entire tourism labor market.